Michael Walker had never been the kind of man who expected surprises, especially not the kind that changed how he saw his own home. He lived a simple life in a quiet Oregon suburb, worked steady hours at a local engineering firm, and believed he knew the rhythm of his family, his wife Claire's calm routines, his 17-year-old son Ethan's quiet habits, and the warm predictability of evenings spent together. But everything began shifting long before he realized it. The small signs had been there for months, drifting through his days like whispers he kept ignoring. Claire had started staying up later, sometimes long after midnight, sitting in the dim light of her phone screen. She smiled less, pulled away more, and seemed trapped in her own thoughts even when she tried to hide it. Michael felt something slipping between them, but each time he tried to ask, she brushed it aside with a soft laugh or a quick excuse, and he, wanting to avoid arguments, let it go. Ethan, however, was different. He saw things more sharply. He paid attention in ways Michael no longer knew how to. That Sunday, the house was wrapped in a strange quiet one that felt heavier than the winter storm outside. Snow had started falling early that morning, covering the streets in a soft white blanket that made the world feel distant. Michael had been away on a quick work trip, just a single overnight meeting across the state. It wasn't unusual, but for some reason he felt an urgency to come home early. The roads were slick, the sky gray, and the air filled with thin ice that clung to his jacket as he stepped through the front door. He expected the warmth of home to greet him, the smell of Claire making soup, maybe the distant sound of Ethan's video games. Instead, he was met by a silence that felt wrong from the moment he took. His first step inside, he set his bag down and listened. Nothing. No low hum of music. No footsteps upstairs, not even the soft rumble of the heater. Just the stillness of a house holding its breath. He called out, "Ethan, Claire," but only his voice answered back. He walked farther in, noticing faint sounds drifting from down the hallways. Oft, shaky breaths and the quick tapping of keys. It wasn't Claire. He knew her rhythms too well. It was Ethan's room. The door was cracked open just enough for Michael to see his son standing in front of his desk. His whole posture stiff, like he was bracing for impact. His hands hovered over the keyboard, trembling a little, and his face was turned toward the screen as if he had just discovered something he wished. He hadn't. Michael felt an uneasiness rising inside him. He pushed the door open gently. "Ethan," he said, keeping his voice calm. The boy jumped, eyes wide, and quickly tried to close the laptop. But his fingers were shaking too much, and Michael had already seen enough to know something wasn't right. Ethan's eyes were red, his breathing uneven, and his face carried a mix of fear and disbelief that no parent ever wants to see. "What's going on?" Michael asked, stepping closer. Dad." Ethan swallowed hard, looked away, and took a deep breath as if he was preparing himself for something impossible to say. "I wasn't looking for anything. Swear. I didn't mean to find it." His voice cracked just a little, enough to show how deeply the moment had shaken him. Michael's heart tightened. "Find what?" Instead of answering, Ethan slowly opened the laptop again, hesitating like he was afraid of hurting his own father. The screen brightened, revealing a long email chain. The subject line was simple, vague, and harmless looking. But the tone of the messages beneath it carried something unmistakably personal. The name at the top of the thread was Daniel, someone Michael didn't know. Someone he had never even heard Claire mention once in all their years together. Michael leaned in slowly, his chest tightening as he scanned the first few lines. The words weren't openly romantic, but they were intimate in another way, emotional, filled with a closeness that didn't belong in his marriage. There were late-night timestamps, apologies, confessions, sentences that hinted at old memories and unresolved feelings. Lines like, "I shouldn't have written again, but I couldn't stop thinking about the past, and I didn't expect hearing from you would hit me this hard." And then Claire's messages. Softer, but unmistakably personal. "I've been struggling. I don't know who to talk to anymore." Michael felt the ground shift beneath him. His hands instinctively closed into fist knot from anger, but from shock that seemed to freeze him in place. He could feel the weight of everything pressing down on his shoulders, heavier with every second that passed. He blinked hard, trying to steady himself. Ethan watched him carefully. "Dad, I'm sorry." His voice was barely above a whisper. "I didn't want to see this. I didn't want to find anything. But I heard Mom's phone buzzing last night, and I had a bad feeling. I was trying to understand what was happening. I promise I wasn't trying to spy." Michael shook his head slowly, trying to calm the storm inside him. "You didn't do anything wrong." His voice came out steadier than he felt. He reached out and rested a hand on Ethan's shoulder. I didn't expect this." Ethan looked like he was holding back tears. "Dad, I'm scared. Are you and Mom okay?" The question hit harder than any email. Michael didn't know how to answer. He had been ignoring the signs for so long. Late nights, quiet dinners, distracted conversations. Now he could no longer pretend. His marriage was not as steady as he believed. But he could not let his son fall apart because of adult problems he was never supposed to carry. So Michael sighed deeply and said, "We're going to handle this. Whatever it is, we'll face it, together." Before either of them could say more, the crunch of tires on snow echoed from the driveway. Claire was home. Michael felt his chest tighten again. He wasn't ready, not emotionally, not mentally, not in any way to confront her. But he couldn't avoid it forever. Ethan looked toward the front door, fear returning to his eyes. "Dad, what are we going to do?" Michael stood up slowly, gathering whatever courage he could find. "For now, we stay calm. Close the laptop." Ethan obeyed immediately, snapping the screen shut and stepping back as if it burned him. The front door opened with a soft click. The familiar sound of Claire kicking off her boots filled the hallway, followed by her gentle, cheerful voice, a voice that suddenly felt like it belonged to a stranger. "Hello? Anyone home?" Michael's pulse quickened. He turned toward the door, rehearsing a dozen different questions, arguments, or explanations in his mind. But when Claire stepped into the hallway, brushing snowflakes from her coat and smiling faintly in that tired way she had lately, all of Michael's planned words vanished. She froze when she saw him. Something in her expression shifted just for a second. A flicker of worry, or guilt, or maybe fear. It was too quick to name, too hidden to be obvious, but it was there. Michael felt Ethan step slightly behind him, the way a younger child might when unsure of what comes next. Claire frowned gently. "You're home early. Everything okay?" Her voice was steady, but her eyes were scanning his face with quiet concern. Michael tried to speak, but no words came out. Not yet. Not while his emotions were crashing through him like waves. Not while Ethan stood beside him, holding his breath. So he exhaled slowly and said, "Only, we need to talk." Claire blinked, confused at first, then visibly tense. "About what?" Michael didn't answer. Not here in the hallway. Not in front of Ethan. Instead, he stepped aside and motioned for her to join them in the living room. Claire hesitated for a moment, her eyes flicking between the two of them. Then, without a word, she followed Dot as she walked past. Michael felt the weight of everything pressing down harder, heavier, almost suffocating. He wondered how long she had been carrying this secret. He wondered how long he had been pretending not to see the distance growing between them. And he wondered what would happen when the truth finally came out, whether it would break the family he had spent years trying to hold together. Ethan hovered near the doorway, unsure whether to stay or leave. Michael nodded gently at him. "It's okay. Stay here." Ethan nodded, trembling just slightly. The storm outside continued to fall, the snow softening the world beyond the window, while inside the Walker home, a different kind of storm was beginning, quiet, painful, and impossible to ignore. And as Michael sat across from Claire, ready to say the words he never imagined speaking, he realized that nothing in their lives would ever be the same again. Claire followed Michael into the living room, her steps slow, uncertain, as if each movement carried the weight of weeks of secrets she had tried to hide. The snow outside continued to fall silently, blanketing the world in white, while inside, the tension was thick enough to feel with every heartbeat. Michael's eyes never left her face. He saw every flicker of emotion, hesitation, worry, shame, and a sadness so deep it seemed to echo through the walls of their home. Ethan stayed near the doorway, hands clasped, watching silently, feeling like an outsider in a situation far too big for him. Yet part of it, whether he wanted to be or not. Michael took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. "Claire, I need to know about Daniel." The words hung in the room like a weight, heavy but necessary. Claire sank slowly into the armchair, her fingers twisting nervously in her lap. She didn't look at him at first. She just stared down at the floor, her shoulders tense. For a moment, she seemed to shrink into herself, as if admitting the truth was the most difficult thing she had ever done. Then she finally lifted her gaze. "Kay." And Michael saw the depth of her regret. "I knew this day would come," she whispered, her voice soft, almost trembling. "I knew someone would see, eventually. I wasn't ready." Michael's chest tightened. "So it is true." His voice was calm, but his heart raced. Every word felt like stepping closer to a cliff he hadn't prepared for. Claire nodded, swallowing hard. "Yes, it's true." She paused, then took a shaky breath. "But not in the way you think." Michael leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees. "Then explain." She closed her eyes briefly, like she was gathering courage from somewhere deep inside. "Daniel, he's from my past. From a long time ago, before I met you. I had a life, a history that I thought I had left behind. But months ago, out of nowhere, he contacted me. I didn't answer at first, but eventually I did. And I regret that, because it opened up emotions I thought I had buried. It made me question things I shouldn't have questioned. Not about you, not really about us, but about myself. And I'm ashamed that it affected my behavior, my words, even my thoughts." Michael listened quietly, his mind racing. Each sentence, each admission was a new layer to unpack. His chest felt tight, and he had to fight to keep his voice steady. "Claire, why didn't you tell me?" She shook her head, her tears finally slipping down her cheeks. "Because I was afraid. Afraid of hurting you, afraid of losing what we built together. I thought I could manage it on my own. I thought I could ignore it. I thought I could keep myself from being dishonest, from hurting you or Ethan. But the emails, they weren't meant to be a secret forever. I just didn't know how to tell you." Ethan shifted slightly at the doorway. His eyes were wide, filled with both sadness and confusion. Michael noticed the way his son's hands clenched together, like he was trying to hold himself together while watching the walls of his family shake. "Mom." Ethan's voice was quiet, hesitant, but it carried the weight of someone too young to understand all the adult complexities around him. "Why didn't you tell us? We could have helped you. We could have been there." Claire looked at him, her expression breaking into a mixture of guilt and love. "I know, Ethan, and I am so sorry. I never wanted you to see this. I never wanted to hurt either of you. I thought I could handle it alone. I thought I could protect this family from mistakes I made in the past. But I see now I was wrong." Michael exhaled slowly, feeling the tension in his body begin to shift. Just a little. His mind was a storm, but his voice came out calm. "Claire, I wish you had told me. We could have faced this together. I would have listened. We could have worked through it without all this secrecy." Claire's head fell into her hands. "I know, I see that now. I see how selfish I was, and I hate that I caused you pain. I hate that Ethan had to find out this way." Ethan stepped a little closer, his voice soft but steady. "We love you, Mom, but things have to change. Secrets can't stay between us. Not anymore. If we're going to stay a family, we need honesty. It's all of us. Even if it hurts." Claire nodded, lifting her face to see her son. The tears in her eyes glistened, but there was also a spark of hope. "You're right, Ethan. I promise. No more secrets. I want us to be honest. All of us. I want this family to be whole again." Michael looked between them, feeling a mixture of relief, sadness, and cautious hope. The emails had shaken him, yes, but he realized that discovering them didn't have to destroy their family. The challenge now was to rebuild, to communicate, and to face the feelings that had been buried for too long. He knew it wouldn't be easy. Trust, once shaken, didn't return overnight. But the first step had been taken. Claire's voice broke the quiet. "I don't want Daniel in my life anymore. I've made that clear in my emails, and I will make it clear to him again if I have to. My life, my heart, it belongs here with you, with this family. I got lost for a little while." Michael nodded slowly, absorbing her words. There was still hurt, there was still doubt, but there was also honesty, and in that moment, it felt like the first time in months they could breathe without hiding. Ethan, still quiet, moved closer to the couch and sat down, folding his hands in his lap. "It's going to take time," he said softly. "All of us. We'll need time. But we can try, right?" Michael placed a hand on his son's shoulder, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "Yes, we'll try. That's all anyone can do. We'll take it one day at a time." Claire reached out, taking Michael's hand gently, her eyes full of remorse and hope. I want to fix this. Fix us." For the first time in weeks, Michael felt a glimmer of something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Not blind hope, not naive hope, but cautious, steady hope that with honesty, communication, and care, they could rebuild what had been shaken. The emails had revealed a fracture, yes. But they had also forced a conversation that could not be ignored any longer. The room fell into a soft silence, broken only by the distant sound of snow piling up outside and the faint hum of the heater. They didn't need to speak immediately. Words were no longer necessary. Just being together in that honest, fragile moment was enough. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time seemed to blur. They talked a little, carefully, softly, Claire answering questions, Michael expressing his feelings without anger, and Ethan listening, absorbing, trying to make sense of adult emotions that were overwhelming yet strangely comforting in their truth. They planned small steps family dinners without phones, regular conversations about feelings, and ways to rebuild trust gradually. They understood that healing wouldn't happen overnight, but they had started the process. Later, as the snow fell heavier and the night deepened, Michael walked Ethan to his room. The boy's eyes were tired but clear. "Dad," he said quietly, "it's weird, but I think I understand more now. I get why Mom did what she did, even if it hurt. And I know you love her, and we all love each other. It's just complicated." Michael nodded, resting a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "It's very complicated. But love isn't always simple, son. It's messy sometimes. What matters is that we face it together. All of us. And we will." Ethan smiled faintly, a small, fragile smile, and went to bed. Michael returned to the living room where Claire was sitting quietly, the faintest relief on her face. No words were spoken at first. They just sat together, side by side, holding hands, sharing the quiet that had once felt impossible. It wasn't perfect. There were no grand gestures of reconciliation, no immediate solutions, just honesty, just presence, just the slow, careful steps of a family beginning to rebuild trust after secrets had shaken them to their core. Outside, the storm continued, covering the world in white, but inside, the Walker home had begun a new chapter. Not one without scars, but one with truth, with effort, and with a hope that had been missing for far too long in that fragile, quiet moment. Michael realized something important. Love wasn't about perfection. It wasn't about never making mistakes. It was about facing mistakes together, admitting faults, and being willing to rebuild the connections that truly mattered. And for the first time in months, he allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, their family could survive this storm stronger, wiser, and closer than before. And though the night was long and the journey ahead uncertain, one thing was clear: honesty had given them a chance to begin again.